Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator.
The informational briefing by the Committee on Housing, Utilities, Public Safety, and Homeland Security is now called to order. It is now 2:06 p.m. For the record and in accordance with 5 GCA Chapter 8, subsection 8107, notices were sent out via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on March 19, 2018, and the second notice on March 21st. With me today is Senator Atta. Thank you, Senator, for coming. The purpose of this informational briefing is to help the committee and the general public understand issues of concern regarding risk to public safety as a result of budgetary shortfalls during the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and agency recommendations to increase revenue. Today we have Chief J.I. Cruz, Mrs. Virginia Menglotnia, Anne Marie Cruz, Attorney Jonathan Kwan, Manny Chung, Major Chung, Ronald Taitano,
Yes.
Ken Matanonia, Captain Ken Matanonia, Paul, sorry, I don't know the last name, how you wrote it out, and Tim and Darren Caldwell. Thank you all for attending today. We met a couple of days ago, no?
Yes.
And really, the discussion that we had was just to address some of the changes that you had to make as a result of the anticipated shortfall, the accounting for some of those changes with fiscal numbers, and then also perhaps a plan or an introduction of revenue sources that we can look at to see how we can fund GPD to make sure and ensure that the public is safe. So I believe you have a testimony or a presentation, Chief, that you'd like to read, and we'll start from there. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, just a moment.
Yes.
Senator Atta?
I would just like to know, I notice Attorney Kwan is here. I would just like to know in what capacity he's here. I notice we have all the men in blue. Are these the heads of the various divisions or what? So maybe if you can just kind of...
Sure. Attorney Kwan is the attorney from the Office of the Attorney General assigned to the Guam Police Department. So he is for all intents and purposes, my legal counsel. The staff officers that you see behind me are my staff officers. They are assigned to one of the various divisions within the Guam Police Department. As we are structured, we have 3 bureaus and a number of divisions within each of those bureaus, and those officers are here in support of this informational hearing.
Okay, so the various functions of GPD is represented here by these men and women in blue. Am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Attorney Kwan, I thought you were in the prosecution division.
So I'm an assistant attorney general right now. I'm an assistant attorney general. I'm in the solicitors division, and I'm assigned as Guam Police Department's legal counsel.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm clear.
Thank you, Senator Atta. I'd also like to recognize Vice Speaker Talahi. Thank you, Vice Speaker. Chief?
Okay, thank you. Mago Fa'anids and Hafade, good afternoon, Madam Chair, and members of the Committee on Housing, Utilities, Public Safety, and Homeland Security. I am Joseph Cruz, the Chief of Police for the Guam Police Department, and I am here in my official capacity, along with key members of the Guam Police Department, to provide information on risk to public safety as a result of budgetary shortfalls due to the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, and to render any agency recommendations to increase revenue. It is important to note that the staff and management of the Guam Police Department continues to work closely with the Bureau of Budget and Management Research, BBMR, and the Department of Administration, DOA, to ensure that we are meeting the intent of the recent and fluid budget cuts. On January 23rd, BBMR Circular 1804 prompted GPD to reduce the FY 2018 general fund appropriations by $2,594,361, when at the time, the estimated loss of general fund revenue was at approximately $47.9 million. Continued projections by the OFB provided in a special economic services meeting indicated that revenue loss to the general fund grew to $67 million. Without an immediate financial solution by the legislature to avert the projected shortfall, the governor promulgated Executive Orders 2018-03 and 2018-04, both of which ordered across-the-board furloughs, anticipating a continued erosion of general fund revenues. Pursuant to Executive Order 2018-04, GPD projected a further reduction in FY 2018 expenditures to $3,860,988. Speaker Cruz was referenced in a Guam Daily Post article on March 22, 2018 that, quote, that 19 to 20 million should be reflected as an expense in the form of a tax refund under the federally required additional child tax credit. This could mean that Gov Guam could be facing a shortfall of about $87 million, end quote. With regards to tax expansion, as indicated in a previous session, GPD expanded operations to the Department of Corrections on March 4, 2018 to reduce overtime expenditures and provide relief to a severely short-staffed operation. External law enforcement agencies continue to assist GPD's Special Operations Division to ensure that we are meeting our patrol mission in the Agana precinct area of responsibility. Furthermore, staff officers are assisting with all warrant service as well as boating safety operations on our waters to ensure that there are no gaps in our field objectives. We expect that staff will also fulfill police dispatch roles during the expected furlough period. With regards to furlough, in compliance with Executive Order 2018-04 and Appendix H of the Government of Guam Personnel Rules and Regulations, furloughs for all personnel will begin no sooner than June 29, 2018 and continue through September 29, 2018 for a total of 13 weeks. Included in the total budget cut of $3.8 million for FY 2018, the furlough will reduce wages for all 366 employees by $1,190,212 during the last quarter of FY 2018. 4 limited-term appointment personnel will be terminated, reducing costs by $27,241.80. Non-continuous furlough projections reduce wages for 64 unsworn personnel by 40 hours to 32 hours a week, reducing costs by $110,331.17. Non-continuous furlough projections for 300 sworn personnel will reduce wages by $1,052,638.97 in consideration that 254 officers are budgeted to perform 43-hour work weeks in compliance with Public Law 30-2015. Based on our existing response matrix, we see a response time increase from the current 15 minutes to approximately 30 to 60 minutes for non-emergency calls during the furlough. Specialized investigative work will also be impacted, resulting in less expeditious closure rates and increased pressure on task force objectives. Police detectives receive approximately 130 new cases each week that build upon 5,000 open cases that currently exist. Reduced manpower will only increase the number of cases that no longer become prosecutable as they go beyond the statute of limitations. These cases number at about 10,000. Emphasis on programs centered in GPD's community policing strategy will not be reduced during the furlough period, considering that crime prevention and public safety awareness efforts are needed most when sworn officers are furloughed. With regards to unfunded mandates, because of the mandates indicated in Title I GCA Chapter 10, Sections 1001 and 1013, further supported by 10 GCA Chapter 77, Article 3, subsection 77302B, increased challenges to operations during this furlough time period are most notable during the Liberation Day festivities. There exists a heavier demand for sworn officers over a period of at least 2 days from July 20th through July 21st and throughout the weeks that carnival operations are occurring. Other events such as the Cocoa Race and the Micronesian Island Fair also require a demand for sworn officers. These events are just the ones codified in Guam law. There are numerous events that are unfunded per se that GPD has to monitor or provide assistance. With the current state of affairs, GPD adjusts operations to be able to assist in such events while not hampering operations at the patrol level and still remain fiscally responsible. With regards to revenue generation, over the recent weeks, furlough preparation briefings have been conducted with all GPD personnel. Department personnel have offered some ideas with the expectation that GPD management will consider and implement in order to avoid the furlough. Some of those ideas have been placed in a suspended status, such as the inability for GPD to restart collections on the highway special use permits due to an injunction ordered by the unified courts. Raising fees at the records and ID section, creating new fees such as the impounded vehicle fee or a lost property fee, and retrieving monies from the fines assessed by the courts through traffic citations, of which over 95% of those citations were written by GPD officers, were amongst several of the suggestions proffered by our personnel. The false alarm fee, which is subsection 58206 of Chapter 58A from Title 10, allows for the Chief of Police to collect a fee of over $50 for each false alarm beyond 12 per year and $100 for each false alarm in excess of 24 per year. If fees are not paid, then the Chief of Police may revoke the alarm permit. Additionally, this fee was never established in GPD's fee schedule since the effective date of the public law, which was Public Law 20-227 in December 19th of 1990. I apologize. And may no longer be feasible considering that the extent of the false alarm problem does not rise to a level where GPD can assess the fee of 12 or 24 false alarm activations per alarm per year. GPD increased 9 of the 28 fees in February of 2014 pursuant to GPD's enabling legislation, which is Title 10, Chapter 77, subsection 77134, and in compliance with the Administrative Adjudication Act, which was Title 5, Chapter 9, Article 3. More importantly is that GPD's Enabling Act, Title 10 from the Guam Code Annotated, Chapter 77, subsection 77134B, does not allow for funds collected by fees to be expended on performing essential crime prevention and law enforcement duties. It is also important to note that the Police Patrol Vehicle and Equipment Fund is also restricted and meant to support our fleet of patrol vehicles through the purchases of vehicles and repair parts, as well as maintenance and servicing. With regards to the legislative bills introduced in support of funding the Guam Police Department, Bill 188-34 by Senator Esteves relative to the increase and recalculation of OVIS fees for deposit into the Police Patrol Vehicle and Equipment Revolving Fund to support the vehicle fleet, as well as Bill 257-34 by Senator Nelson relative to eliminating tax exemptions with revenue generated to be deposited into the Police Services Fund for training and equipment. Both of these bills, if passed into law, are well-intended but are still restrictive and will not directly address the personnel costs allowable with general fund revenue to, quote, perform essential crime prevention and law enforcement duties, end quote. Senator Nelson's bill is consistent with an earlier bill, Bill 27931, introduced by Senator Tom Atta in 2011. Again, if the bill were successful, it would have only funded vehicle maintenance and not law enforcement functions. GPD's position on recommendations to generate revenue were supported by Bill 24534, introduced by Governor Calvo, and the most recent Public Law 34-87 that addresses the tax-based erosion through a more reasonable budget cut, a temporary increase in a business privilege tax, and an implementation of a sales tax. With regards to GPD budgeting, the Guam Police Department relies on funding justified in the executive budget requests with the resulting appropriations by the legislature every fiscal year. In the recent 3 fiscal years, appropriation to the overall budget include, in FY 2016, the executive budget request was $40,070,949. What was appropriated was $35,432,536, which was a difference of $4,638,413. In FY 2017, the EBR was $39,838,817, and what was appropriated was $35,609,698, which was a difference of $4,229,119. Finally, in fiscal year 2018, the executive budget request was $38,980,570. What was appropriated was $35,921,783, which was a difference of $3,058,787. An average of almost $4 million was not appropriated to the Guam Police Department in the recent 3 fiscal years. All the while, we have made every effort to grow more efficiently to avoid any negative impact to our public safety mission. As a result of these shortfalls, efforts are made to increase efficiency in our programs. GPD currently manages 22 grants and sub-grants that fund major programs throughout the recent fiscal years. The most recent and notable grant programs are funding for 15 police officer recruitments at $1,660,578, GPD communications upgrade at $1,170,000, an evidential control facility at $1,045,000, police patrol vehicles at $1 million, and a network system conversion at $500,000. A total of $9,477,765 in grant funding is available at this time, and we continue to seek out funding opportunity announcements for federal grant dollars to support operations and, as much as possible, law enforcement functions. As I begin to close, Madam Chair, I must contend that although the speaker questions GPD's spending habits, focusing on the fact that GPD has only recruited 16 people in the Guam Police Department during those years when the public safety vacancy pool funding existed, yet we managed to promote 132 of our personnel, GPD provided a deliberate response in front of the committee as a whole during last year's budget discussion, as well as in the letter that I have delivered to the Speaker just this afternoon. The bottom line up front is that GPD over the last several fiscal years made 89 attempts from 2 certification lists and several supplemental lists in an attempt to recruit personnel and make use of that public safety vacancy pool monies that existed. Of the 89 persons on that list, only 16 were hired, while the remaining 73 either no longer wanted the job or had failed pre-screening requirements as codified in 10 GCA, Chapter 77, Article 1, subsection 77114A through E. Furthermore, the funding for the promotions of 132 of our personnel during the last round of promotions was allotted to GPD through the introduction of Bill 30933 that subsequently passed into Public Law 33-163. We did not misuse or misspend money allocated to us. Monies were spent in accordance with Guam law. The Guam Police Department has been and will continue to be fiscally responsible and judicious with the monies allocated to it. Madam Chair and committee members, in closing, I would like to note that the service and protection of our people, our ability to accomplish our mission, is paramount in the Guam Police Department. As such, we will accomplish our mission one way or the other, because for our people, quote, failure is simply not an option, end quote. Sizus Masi para tempo mizu pagu, I thank you for this opportunity to provide this testimony this afternoon. At this point, I am subject to any questions that you may have for me or my staff.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Senator.
I'm glad that you are singing a different tune from last week and saying that you will meet the mission. I'd like to open it at this time for the panel. If you have any questions. Speaker? No? No? No questions?
I don't have a copy of your testimony in front of you, but it was quite detailed. And if I could go back to the part where you were talking about furloughs, you said you've briefed all the officers about furlough. And are all those still going forward? Are you going forward with all of those?
Well, Madam Vice Speaker, until I receive something that either rescinds or gives me guidance otherwise not to proceed forward with the furlough, I am briefing my personnel accordingly, and I have submitted the necessary documentation based on Appendix H of DOA's rules and regs to the Department of Administration. They have received it, they have acknowledged of it, and they will be meeting with me to discuss how to move forward with the furloughs. So to answer your question directly, Madam Vice Speaker, yes, I'm still moving forward until such time that I am directed otherwise, that we are to stand down on furlough directives.
All right. Are those intended to meet 600,000 in cuts or more than
The
that?
furloughs are identified at to save the Guam or the government of Guam over $1 million. I believe the number is, and first, do we have the exact number? It's like 1,100,000 and some odd thousand. I'm sorry, let me just go to that portion here exactly. $1,190,212. So, should we have to execute the furlough, of which we are currently planning, that's the dollar amount between now and the end of the fiscal year that we will save the government of Guam.
All right. Is that consistent with the recent fiscal realignment plan that the governor sent?
Well,
I'm reading it to say only a reduction of 631,000.
Again, that is in draft bill form, Senator. I have received, or I've been given a copy of that draft. But until I'm confident or I receive guidance otherwise that that bill is going to pass on session floor and make it to the governor, then until then we need to consider moving forward, because should it not, and I still need to meet the guidance that's been put before me with regards to the furloughs and the other cuts that we have to take, there's a notification process as we follow DOA's rules and regs, Appendix H. So because there's a timeline, there's a notification process, I need to stay in line with that. In the event that it comes to that, that's where we're moving forward. But I have read that document, Madam Vice Speaker, that indicates that what GPD is looking at is only $631,740. So my fiscal team is here with me, and we are going to take a look at that to figure out what are the impacts, should we not have to furlough, and that's the only amount that we have to deal with.
All right, so you're trying to meet which advisory?
Well, there's an executive order out, Madam Vice Speaker, Executive Order 2018-04, that is very explicit. On the second page of that document, it's an across-the-board application of all departments, all agencies, all bureaus throughout the executive branch of government. So it's based on that executive order that I'm moving forward in preparing to continue to lead and manage the Guam Police Department. Should another document come out, whether it be signed by the governor or guidance otherwise, then by all means I will definitely adjust accordingly.
All right, and so what is your total that you are aiming for under that executive order?
Under that executive order, which specifically mentions the furlough, again, that cost is $1,190,212. That's just the furlough.
But it doesn't mandate a furlough, the executive order, right?
As I read it,
So you're trying to, I thought you read other measures that you're trying to take to reach a certain amount. So you're trying to reach this amount of $1,900,000?
Well, again,
are you going for a certain amount, or are you just trying to furlough? What is the goal?
Okay, so the guidance that I got are basically two documents. There was a document given to me in response to, or it was BBMR Circular 2018.
Right, so that one was supposed to be a reduction of
$1804.
$2.594 million.
Right.
Your response to them was you couldn't do it, so they did not include you in their first fiscal realignment plan, right? But then you said you got an executive order that now you're following?
That is correct. The executive order went out, and Attorney Kwan also took a look at that executive order. This is it right here. So basically, this is the executive order, Madam Vice Speaker. And as we looked at it, I'm highlighting portion 2, across the board application. The executive order shall apply regardless of the funding source to all government of Guam departments, bureaus, or agencies, including autonomous, semi-autonomous agencies, and other instrumentalities of the executive branch of government of Guam based on the respective furlough and layoff personnel rules and regulations, and shall further apply to federally funded positions, whether fully or partially funded. So based on legal counsel's guidance, there's no exemption for police officers. There's no exemption to anything in the Guam Police Department just based on this document. So this is the document that I'm moving forward with, in addition to BBMR Circular 2018-04 that has indicated that I have to look at a cut of $2.6 million, I believe it is, $2.5 million. So that's why altogether, that's what we're looking at. And again, I just received the governor's realignment plan only this morning. So that changes the dynamics of what's happening here quite obviously. But until I get something in black and white, or at least some kind of verbal guidance telling me that this is how we're going to move forward, I'm planning based on hard documentation provided to me via the executive order and via the BBMR circular.
I'll leave it to you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker.
Is there a total then that you're operating under? What's your total? Because we were told you were not going to be cut under the first fiscal realignment plan because you said you were not able to, and. But so what is the total, 1.9 million, or is there more?
There's actually more.
I thought you read more, yes. So
yes, it's actually 3.6 million.
So you're trying to cut 3.6 million because of?
Because of the furlough and because of the BBMR circular. The guidance I'm getting is just hard document.
The BBMR circular is only 2.59 million.
There was an addendum that we submitted. Do we have that addendum there? There was an addendum that we submitted.
Oh, okay, then can we get all your responses to these BBMR? But the first response we have says you could not do any of these things.
Yes.
And so BBMR came back to us and told us they did not include you because you were not able to make any cuts. And but now you're going way above and beyond the 2.59 even listed in the first fiscal realignment plan. All right. If I could just get your responses to the circulars, thank you.
Yep. It's the initial response to a circular we received, and then an addendum to that as well. So those documents are the documents that we're using as we go forward.
All right, and I hate to make you keep repeating, but can we get a copy of your testimony then, so we
Absolutely.
can follow along with those numbers? Thank you.
Sure,
Thank you, Chief.
sure.
Senator Ada?
Thank you. So you're proceeding on the premise that GPD is going to have to implement furloughs, regardless of whether you're in group 1, 2, or 3. So there's no, for example, furloughs, to your understanding, agencies in groups 3 or groups 2. You're familiar with what I'm talking about?
I'm familiar with the public
Okay.
law. That,
all right.
Yes.
That they're going to be furloughed just as GPD would, or GPD would be also as same as those. But beyond that, so let's assume that that's the case, that GPD is going to have to implement a furlough. Do you have a furlough plan already? How do you envision that furlough to be done?
So the furlough plan was captured in a document or documents that I submitted to the director of DOA. And basically, it's a justification for the furlough. And we use the BBMR Circular 2018-04, as well as the Executive Order 2018-04, plus other documentations required in Appendix H of DOA's rules and regs. And they include what a 32-hour work week plan would be for every entity within the Guam Police Department, as well as the financial cost attached to this furlough.
Okay, so let me restate my question. When you implement the furlough plan, are you going to go and strip the civilian force first that you have in the department? And then if that's still not enough, then you're going to start furloughing the men and women in uniform?
Based on the guidance that I got from, to answer your question up front directly, Senator, no, that is not our plan. Our plan is an across-the-board application to be effective no earlier than June 29, 2018. So it's not a phased operation to remove civilians first and then police officers. Based on the guidance that I've received, which tells me to refer back to DOA's Rules and Regs Appendix H. I've even had Attorney Kwan look at Appendix H and guide me accordingly so that I'm doing this legally. His advice was it's an across-the-board application to be executed no earlier than June 29, 2018.
So if I understand your answer, then you're saying that a sworn officer could possibly be furloughed before an administrative, a civilian in an administrative position?
Based on, again, to answer that question up front, the application is across the board at the same time, no earlier than June 29, 2018. And I'm looking at 66 civilian employees and 300 of GPD's uniform employees.
So what's the proportion of the uniform sworn employees that, if you were to implement a full-blown furlough, what's the proportion of uniformed employees that would be furloughed?
I mean, again, because the language in the executive order is very clear of across the board, the furlough is everybody. It's 300 of my uniform officers and 66 of my civilian employees.
Now, what's your understanding of furlough? That it's just going to be from 40 hours to 30 hours a week?
For uniformed officers, it's for those officers who are unsworn, of which 66 of them are civilian employees, it's 40 hours to 32 hours. For non-continuous furloughs, for 300 of our sworn officers to reduce, 254 of the 300 will be reduced from 43 hours to 32 hours. The difference of 300 to 254, that portion will be reduced from 40 hours to 32 hours. And that's because of what Public Law 30-2015 tells us. In other words, some of our officers are on 43-hour work weeks and 86-hour pay periods. So based on that, because the way we develop our work week and our pay period, we accrue, or portions of our officers accrue 43 hours in the work week and 86 hours in the pay period.
Okay.
So the furlough would reduce all that to 32 hours.
So I don't want to get lost in the weeds. I'm already starting to get lost in the weeds. But what I hear you saying is that in GPD, the sworn uniformed officers who patrol our streets and our community out there is given no preference over a civilian administrative employee.
Well, to answer that question, yes, absolutely, Senator.
Okay.
And
do
it's
you agree with that?
Well, whether or not I agree with it is what the executive order says. So I have to execute what the executive order says, regardless of whether I agree with it or not.
Then what's your opinion, do you
My
think?
opinion is my opinion, but I'm following the
what is your
letter
opinion?
of the executive order.
Fine, then what is your opinion?
My opinion is that the government of Guam is facing a cash crisis. My opinion is that if we don't do something about this to address it, then yes, we do have to do the furlough.
And I think you're, well...
You're asking me for my
okay,
opinion, Senator.
Fine. And my opinion is that GPD is tasked with the responsibility of maintaining the safety and security in our community.
Absolutely.
You let somebody else worry about how they're going to backfill $67 million shortfall. But I think that the mission of GPD is to maintain that security out there, and to tell me that, well, that's what the thing says.
Well, Senator, we've developed our plan. And our plan, based on Major Manny Chong, Captain Ken Mantanoia, and Major Andrew Kittigawa's development of our work schedule at 32 hours a week, we do not see that we are not going to be able to accomplish our mission, as I stated in the closing paragraph of my testimony.
Okay. All right, just one other item here. It's been talked a lot in the talk show radios. In fact, it's almost been a joke about shutting down of the Agana precinct to take police officers up to DOC so that they can be chauffeurs to take prisoners down to the court or to man the visitor's desk. Do you still agree? And you've said in another hearing that was actually done more so to alleviate the high overtime at DOC, not to alleviate the high overtime in GPD. So can you kind of, I mean, it's kind of become the butt of a joke already.
Well, to put it in terms that you're familiar with, Senator, it's helping out my battle buddy. It's helping out another law enforcement entity, another entity within the public safety arena. It's about the bigger picture in the government of Guam. So I'm going to help out my battle buddy at DOC so that we can reduce the costs in the government.
At the expense of, well, I know that you mentioned, I just got your testimony now, and there was a lot of details in there. But you mentioned about, I guess, between that and the furloughs, we're looking at increasing response time from 15 minutes to 30 minutes, and that doesn't give me any comfort at all. And somehow it comes across rather nonchalant that, you know, a response time that is twice than what it normally is just doesn't seem comforting. So that's my opinion.
I understand, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Senator Lee for attending as well. Do you have any questions? No? Okay. I have a couple questions for you,
Yes,
Chief.
ma'am.
Can you please remind us what were the actions that you initially took when you were given the order that you must do something to address the $67 million shortfall?
Well, the actions I took was to consider what in the Guam Police Department we can do to reduce our budget so that we are not, the government is not looking at a $67 million shortfall. So the first thing we took a look at was that and it's via that BBMR circular. So the fiscal team stopped and we took a look at that and we figured out where we can shift monies around within the monies that the budget that was appropriated to us, and we managed to come up with $2.5 million. So my ASO is here with, as well as my federal programs officer in charge, and they came up with the specifics as to how we're going to move monies around to first meet that $2.5 billion.
And how much did you save when you closed down the Agana precinct to move?
Of figuring out how to address $2.5 million.
What is the operational cost for Agana precinct? In overtime first?
For FY18, right now we are accruing for Agana precinct to date $16,917.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you say that again, please?
As of, it's $16,917.06.
Thank you. How many calls does the Agana precinct respond to?
Senator, I don't have that exact number, but I can get you. Manny, you can make a note of that. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me as to how many calls in the year that we get, but we do keep track of that information.
What is their area of operation?
Their area of operations is primarily the central part of the island. Portions of, well, obviously the Agana precinct, or the village of Agana proper, portions of Maina, Agana Heights, Sinanya, Orda Chalampago, parts of Jotnya, Mangilao, Barragata, Mongmong Totomaiti, and portions of the lower Barragata Heights area, I believe. Yes.
What is the manpower? How many do you have at Agana precinct that were assigned?
Assigned to Agana precinct are 37 police officers.
Okay. Down south,
Yes.
what precincts do we have down south?
We have one precinct down south.
And what is it?
Agate Precinct Command.
What is the population for down south
I don't have the definitive
that you
numbers for
respond
the.
to in your AO?
I'm sorry?
That you respond to in your AO, what is the population?
In response to the what again?
That the Agate precinct, what is
Yes.
the population that you respond to?
The
For Agate
population,
precinct.
the actual number of persons, we do have that information. I don't have that information in front of me as to the exact, the numbers for the breakdown in each of the villages that fall in under Agate precincts, but I can get you that information.
I went back and I watched your appointment hearing, and it was very impressive. I do remember you taking a very different leadership approach, and I feel that you are a very competent leader. To summarize, the approach that you were taking is that you would also allow your command staff input on the decisions that you make.
Yes.
Okay. And so I'm wondering, when you decided to close down Agana Heights, did you seek their input?
I did.
And they were all okay with it?
They were.
Okay. Thank you. Can you please tell me what law enforcement agencies are augmented to you and how many they are?
The law enforcement
force-
entities that are augmenting the Guam Police Department for our patrol augmentation in the Agana Precinct area responsibility are the Port Authority officers, of which on a daily basis they provide 1 or 2. The airport police, Guam International Airport Authority police officers, of which they provide 6. The conservation officers, of which they were providing 5. They've now since have taken back 3 of their police officers or conservation officers. And then the park rangers, Department of Parks and Recreations, park rangers, of which they have 2 officers.
What is their primary duty?
Their primary duty is to conduct patrol operations.
Patrol operations?
Yes.
Okay.
Responding to preliminary investigations, initial response to calls for service.
Okay. When was the start date for these officers?
The start date for that was,
And were they all across the board? Did they all start on the same day, or did they come in staggered?
they all started on that same
Okay.
day. I believe it's March 4th.
Have any of them made any arrests or written out any tickets?
Have any of them what again?
Have any of them made, these law enforcement agencies that are augmented to you, these officers, have they made any arrests or written out any tickets?
I am not aware specifically of whether they have. I could go back and query our system to determine that. But at this point in time, I don't have that exact information, whether they've issued citations or have made any arrests.
Attorney Kwan, I have a question for you. What is the jurisdictional law for these law enforcement agencies as far as arrests being made, ticket citation? Attorney Kwan?
Yes, ma'am. Hold on a moment. Senator, at this point, I'm here as Guam Police Department's legal counsel.
I'm sorry, can you
I'm
bring
here
the
as
mic
Guam
closer
Police
to you?
Department's legal counsel. So if I answer questions directly to you, I technically
Okay,
waive
so can you
privilege.
give the information to the chief so that he can answer the question?
He can choose to. So what was the
Okay,
question
if-
again?
The question is what is the jurisdictional law for these augmented law enforcement agencies to hand out or to write out citations and to perform arrests?
Okay. Title 8, 2020. Okay. From GPD. Okay. So, Madam Chair, the jurisdiction that allows external law enforcement entities to assist Guam Police Department exists in Title 8, subsection 20.15 and 20.20, as well as Chapter 77 of Title 10, subsection 77-103, 106, and 107. Those are the provisions of the law that allow external agencies to perform functions, law enforcement functions in the Guam Police Department.
Would these law enforcement agencies be in violation of any of those statutes if they were augmented to you without properly being deputized to make arrests or to write out citations?
Okay, yes. Okay. So the guidance that we got from the Attorney General was that based on those statutes from Title 8, subsection 20.15 and 20.20, as well as Title 10, Chapter 77, the guidance from the Attorney General is that no, there is no issues with those police officers conducting their duties within the Guam Police Department.
So there is no need for you to deputize them in order for them to act as a fully fledged patrol officer of the Guam Police Department.
Okay.
The statutes are different in terms of their authority. So her use of deputization doesn't necessarily fit in these statutes.
So, Madam Chair, your use of the word deputization, the application of the use of the word deputization varies depending on the statute that we're referencing. So
what if they were to respond to a domestic violence call? How would that work? Are they able to arrest someone? Are they properly trained? Because I know Port Police don't respond to domestic violence call. I'm pretty sure the Airport Authority don't respond to domestic violence calls. So
again,
how are they trained?
Based on Title 8, subsection 20.20, they are able to make arrests.
Okay. And are there any restrictions?
At this point in time, based on these sections of the law that I've highlighted, there are no restrictions. And again, this is guidance that we've gotten from the Attorney General herself while conferring with other Assistant Attorney Generals as well.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Senator Lee, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief, for being here. I wanted to ask, the GPD officers that are being reassigned to the Department of Corrections, what are their duties there?
Their duties range from manning a post from what I believe is called central control, manning the visitation center, manning the intake hub, and conducting perimeter checks or security checks of the perimeter.
I ask because I'm very concerned about the safety of our officers at DOC. We all know that many of these GPD officers that have placed these offenders in there have worked with other members of our agencies and other members of the community to put these offenders behind bars. And so I'm just very concerned about potential retaliation. I'm very concerned about those kinds of things. So if a community member were to ask you about your level of confidence in the safety of these officers, how would you respond to that?
I would respond by saying that the Guam Police Department officers that are assigned to the Department of Corrections do not interact with the general population as they are kept up at the Department of Corrections. One of the duties that I did not mention was also transport duties from the Department of Corrections down to the judiciary. So the contact between a GPD officer and the general population is minimized. It's minimal at best.
But you did say visitation centers and intake, so there is opportunity for something to happen.
There are opportunities, and our officers are up there working also with Department of Corrections officers as well. So to answer your question up front, my level of comfort as far as their safety and security is relatively high. I've talked to Director Tony Lamarena, and we've all had conversations with the warden as well. And it's for that particular reason that they're kept at central control, at the visitation hub, at the intake, and again, minimized with the transport so as to mitigate potentials of risk to our police officers as they interact or as they're exposed to the general population.
Thank you, Chief. You also mentioned that there are conservation officers, port and airport officers. parks, maybe customs officers that are helping to kind of cover down and
No
are reassigned? You said they were reassigned to GPD?
Yeah, all but customs officers, ma'am.
All but
There
customs
are no
officers.
customs officers assigned to us.
Okay. And I wanted to ask, are there any federally funded programs that are potentially in jeopardy by having these officers reassigned?
I was made aware that there was the Department of Agriculture's conservation officers were looking at some of that. It's for that reason that 3 of their officers have gone back to the Department of Agriculture to push forth with their enforcement of the conservation laws so as not to jeopardize federal funding. So they have gone back to be able to deal with that.
Okay, and what about the rest of them? So for the port, airport?
I am not aware that there's any federal funding being jeopardized, as I've had those conversations with their respective chiefs from those entities.
Okay.
One of the things that was brought to light by Attorney Kwan was that based on the way Title 8 is written, only the Guam Police Department can traverse across the law enforcement spectrum. Only the Guam Police Department can go up to DOC without any jurisdictional issues coming to play. If a Port Authority police officer or an airport police officer or any of the other police officers in any entities were to go up to DOC without being, what's the term that's used? Subordinated by a Guam Police Department police officer, there would be a jurisdictional issue. In other words, they don't have that authority to work outside of their jurisdiction at the port, at the airport, at the parks, or in the wildlife without being subordinated to a Guam Police Department officer. So while there was question about sending officers up there, GPD would still have to be up there if we were going to be able to do that because of the way Title 8 is written.
And are those officers that are up at DOC armed?
When they go in and assume duties, none of the officers are armed, to include corrections officers. The only officers that carry firearms up there are their Special Operations Response Team. Otherwise, none of the officers up there, to include corrections officers, are armed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Could I just follow up on that? So are the port police, do they have jurisdiction in Agana?
In Agana, they do, because they're working and subordinated to a Guam Police Department police officer.
What does that mean, subordinated?
It means
they have
that
a supervising officer who's a
They have
GPD?
a supervising officer, yes.
Are all the officers in this room out on patrol, or none of them are out on patrol?
These are all staff officers, ma'am.
Yeah.
None of them are from patrol.
I counted 15 plus 4 not in uniform.
I'm sorry?
19? All right.
Of the officers behind me? These are all staff officers.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Speaker?
That was probably a perfect segue, because I'm going to ask a very simple question. With, with all the promotions, have the hours that you've needed to use reserve officers increased during this fiscal year?
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, have the hours?
For reserve officers, or the reserve?
Civilian volunteer
Yes,
police
civilian
reserves?
volunteer.
Yes.
Have their hours increased as a result of the promotions and the inability to fill positions because of recruitment?
We have worked with our CVPRs. So to answer your question, have the hours increased? The hours are all dependent on their ability to volunteer their time to the Guam Police Department. So if they are able to volunteer their time off of their full-time job, then we bring them in and they work for us. To answer your question directly, has it increased? We haven't done the analysis to see whether it has gone up, but from what we see, it still remains the same. It's all dependent on their ability to volunteer their time.
How current are we with the payments to the reserve officers?
We are current up until, I believe, February of this year, Speaker.
So we're back 3 pay periods for them?
Well, as the timesheets come in, a payment is submitted to DOA, and from there on it takes. But as payment has been made up until February.
Have you noticed an increase in the amount that's being paid to the officers?
No, the CVPRs are paid a monthly stipend of $250 upon completion of a 40-hour work week, of 40 hours or more.
In the month.
In a month's time, per month.
So they could work 80 hours and they would still only get a...
Yes,
If they so wish to volunteer that amount of time.
But we're only 3 pay periods back now?
Yes, Speaker.
Is there a reason why we can't get them more current than that? I mean, I don't...
I do contact DOA, and as you probably know, that it's not a matter of having to pay it, but it's actually with the cash flow. Payments are submitted, requests are being sent up to DOA for processing, and I do monitor that, on a weekly basis.
The amount that's being paid to these reserve officers, the total budget is less than...
Mr. Speaker, I think what my ASO is saying is that on our end, right up to everything that GPD can physically be able to do to pay the reserve officer, we've processed all that paperwork in. We've processed the timesheets and we submitted paperwork to have the stipends paid out. What happens after we transmit that to DOA is a function of DOA. So them not paying it out, I'm not going to speak on behalf of the acting director. All I'm saying is we've done all our part. As soon as the timesheets come across our desks, we approve it, we do the paperwork, we send it to DOA, and up to that point, we are current. So we are current up to this point in time in processing paperwork on our end to allow DOA to be able to pay that out. I cannot answer for what happens after DOA receives that paperwork because they're the ones that prepare that payment.
And is there an allotment that needs to be released at DOA to get this? Is there a separate amount for them that needs to be done? I mean, the total budget for the reserve officers is less than 1 week for one of any of the 23 units.
I agree, Mr. Speaker, but again, to answer your question, there's no special, everything that has needed to be done, we've done.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Adam. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Chief, I reacted to an earlier statement that you made about the impact on the response time should a furlough be implemented. And I went back and I read that, and it said that it's going to increase from 15 minutes to approximately 30 to 60 minutes for non-emergency calls. So generally, what is a non-emergency call?
A non-emergency call could be
a fender bender,
a traffic accident that occurred in a private parking lot, a cat stuck in the tree, any of those calls that are not that do not warrant, it's not jeopardizing a person's life. It's not a home invasion. It's not a burglary in progress. It's not a robbery in progress. It's not a fight or an aggravated assault in progress. Things of that immediate calls for calls in progress.
So maybe a lesson learned when you walk away from this here is always make sure that the panel has a copy of your testimony.
Yes. Because
all I heard you say was that the response time was going to increase from 15 minutes to 30, 60 minutes. And I missed that part about for non-emergency calls.
Yes, sir.
Now you mentioned here also that there exists a heavier demand for sworn officers over a period of at least 2 days during Liberation Day, Coco Rays, and all that. Those are events that are coming up, right? You got,
that is correct.
Yeah. So has your department made any recommendations to the governor as to how to meet that demand, given if under a furlough environment, how that demand is going to be met?
That is something, Senator, that I've been talking with my staff. I've tasked that to Major Chong to develop plans of operations and recommendations for me to make to the governor, as well as working with the Mayor's Council and the committee for the Micronesian Island Fair to figure out how we can address this amidst the impending furlough. So to answer your question up front, again, we're still putting those operational plans together. We're taking a look at our work schedules, and we're looking at our CVPRs to see who we can get a more firm commitment from, as well as our CAPE volunteers to see we can get more of a firm commitment from, to be able to get a dedicated group to be able to deal with the influx for the Liberation Day Parade, the Cocoa Race, and any other of these unfunded mandates.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thank you, Senator.
Sorry, just on that note, Chief, I know that the United Guam Marathon is coming up April 8th.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that also part of your planning? Because I know that GPD has been really
We've been
instrumental in
working
the
with that
past.
committee, and we're looking at, one of the things that we've done is we've offered traffic direction training to the persons of that, and Major Chong is my man with that plan. He's working with those committees who organize, the event organizers, to do traffic direction and traffic escorts, those types of things, so that it alleviates us having to be there. So that's how we're dealing with that, and those are some of the things that we're looking at as well for the event coordinators or planners. Senator Ada, working with the Mayor's Council, how can we leverage more of the non-sworn personnel to be able to do some of those duties, like traffic direction, to be able to assist in the upcoming events that were referenced.
Thank you. Yeah, I just gave a nod to Major Chong because we worked together on many of these events in the past.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I know that he has a wealth of experience. He knows exactly what the
Yes, ma'am.
organizers need,
Yes, ma'am.
and can help us to get that from GPD's side. So
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Chief, I just want to follow up again on the, I think when we were in one of these special sessions and you had told us about your plan to close the Agana precinct, I had asked you if you could give us your plan at that time in writing so that we could all be assured what measures were being put into place. Does this testimony constitute your plan? I mean, is this everything that you're doing to cut costs?
For the most part, yes, ma'am, it does. So to answer specifically, the plan or the work schedule that we've come up with, again, I've looked at Major Chong as the acting police commander. So he's developed work schedules, he's developed the work plans and their duties and responsibilities to be able to deal with the augmentation force, filling in the gap from those officers that were assigned to Agana precinct. So that plan is not addressed in this particular testimony, because this testimony talks about our budget cuts and the furloughs and things of that nature.
I'd like to see the plan that says how many officers from the other agencies are being used, where they're going to be assigned, and who's the supervising officer for those people. Are they being trained? And what do you do when you bring them into work a precinct? Because I can't help but feel like, us in the community, we trust you. You are the ones who've been working these precincts, right? And these people, I mean, your Mandania Task Force is all about creating this relationship with a community. That's what neighborhood policing is all about. And I find it's very perplexing up to now to figure out why are we taking people who are used to working in precincts out of the precincts and putting people who are not used to working in the precincts into precincts, and was there no other way? And I also want to ask you, this need for a subordination or a supervising officer for the other law enforcement agencies that are being brought over to assist, could that be done up at DOC? If you put a supervising officer up there, would they have jurisdiction up there then?
Apologize. Again, it is possible, but we don't know at this point in time.
The other reason is because are we supposed to believe after this period of, I don't know how we're going to describe it in history, you know, a few months or years from now, but after this period, are we as a community supposed to believe that we don't need specially trained police officers, that everyone, because I was a member of Post when I was working up at UOG, I was a representative, and I understand the law. It's supposed to make everyone have, you know, the basics, right? But when you get into your own department, your own agency with your own specialized mission, they're not all the same. They're very different, in fact, and they are supposed to be trained specially for that. And I remember the police department, you know, they always make a big deal that your training is special, right? It's not the same. There are some there's basic training, or there's training that is, of course, across the board supposed to be uniform, but it was never intended that a person working in a precinct or going to a neighborhood, dealing with the manamko, dealing with children, is the same as a person who works, you know, in a K-9 unit, or a person who works in other types of departments. And so I am confident, and I trust that all of the police officers in this room and out in the field, that they know that you have been doing this all your lives. You know this more than us. You know what it takes to be out there. And this is not sitting very well with me, and I know you're trying to do your part to cut costs, but you know, even the furlough procedures, it's like you're cutting now. You're proposing to cut $3-point-some million when you were only asked at a certain point to cut $2-point-some million, and you're saying you're following an order that says to furlough everyone. Well, the furlough rules are very, very clear that if you're going to follow the rules, you have to go to unclassified. You have to name the class of employees that you as the chief or the head of the department feel can be furloughed. Where after all other cost-cutting measures, which is why I really want to see what other cost-cutting measures were proposed by the police department, as opposed to, you know, letting off police officers. And so the rules are very clear, you know, that you pick the class of employees. For example, clerks, we would think, and no offense to all my friends who work in this, but you know, we're all a community, and no one wants anybody to, but I'm just saying that the logic of it it's not making sense to us, that we are going to treat under our own furlough rules that say you pick a class of employees such as a clerk 1, or you know, if you want to say a police officer, then you pick a police officer 1, and you pick a class, and then you go to the unclassified first in that class, and then the probationary, and you know, the whole, there's a list. And if you haven't even been given the 3-point-some number that you're going to take on, I don't know. I'm almost feeling like I don't even want to get into that anymore, other than just to say it's very disappointing to hear that that's the plan. I would like to see your furlough plan that you submitted to the Department of Administration, because I can't imagine that that we're going to have to put up with that. That you're going to tell us that, you know, to play this game, we're going to cut police officers, we're going to furlough all of them, just the same as we are going to furlough any unclassified. Do you have unclassified employees?
We have 4 of them.
Yeah.
And in my
unclassified
testimony,
employees or other, you know, and I know that the non-uniformed personnel you've made that very clear to us. We know that, but still, when it comes to furloughing police officers, even the furlough rules, they make priority for public safety, and they say that straight out. So, and the reason I don't want to get into it anymore, I guess, Madam Chair, and I'm going to leave it up to you, but it's because now we received it on Friday. You should have received it the same day. It was in the news, or I think Friday or Thursday, that the governor, you know, sent out a new fiscal realignment plan. And these changes he's making pursuant to his own director, you know, BBMR, DOA, they decide what they're going to give you or not give you. And now, you know, it's still in his hands what he can give you or not give you. And I just think for you to be, I don't know, making the public, you know, making these announcements and I understand that you went around to all the police officers and told them that they're all at risk of furlough, and I don't understand what that's all about at all. I mean, I guess I'm going to look for your written documents to see what other cost-cutting measures they have proposed to you, which ones you've ruled out completely,
with regards
because
to,
otherwise the executive branch in their fiscal realignment plan does not show that type of $3-some million cuts to GPD. So I'm shocked that you would. That's what we're going to talk about today. It seems like even to them, even to the governor, that's not the you know, that's not where he's going to cut.
Okay, Senator, in response to your series of questions that I do remember, yes, there is a unit directive guiding the personnel assigned to the augmentation for Agana precinct on their duties and responsibilities. That's been in place before they even assumed duty. As far as the officers from Agana precinct assigned to the Department of Corrections, I created a unit directive guiding them on how to perform their duties up there. And like the chief said, they're only supposed to be working on certain areas with very minimal interaction with the inmates. Because like you said, you know, we arrested these guys, or like what Senator Lee said, we arrested these guys, and now we're watching them. So in the beginning, yes, there was some tension, but because of the information that I received from the officers, that they received from the DOC officers, the plan has been finalized, and actually everything is pretty good up there. The officers up there actually view this as a break because they don't have to write 5, 6 reports every day. In regards to the augmentation from the other agencies, okay, it was Department of Agriculture that did mention that they had some federal grants that were in jeopardy if they didn't start enforcing that. So we did send some back, but we still have 3 assisting us. The Port Police, they send personnel every shift. Everybody's on a 12-hour shift, 3.5 days on, 3.5 days off. Okay, that's to save overtime. Because on a shift like that, you can have 1 supervisor, 1 desk watch, and 4 people patrolling the streets. Okay. In response to Senator Ada's question regarding the plan for, in case worse comes to worse, I'm going to get into a furlough. Everybody in the Guam, every section in the Guam Police Department has already submitted their work schedule. Okay. The way that's going to happen is everybody, even patrol, is going to have to go into an 8-hour shift. So 3 8-hour shifts. So that way we take, or the officer has to take an extra day off for that. However, the way we distributed them, we are at the minimum of 1, 1, and 4 threshold for the different precincts. So we got that covered. Now, of course, if somebody takes leave for any type of emergencies, we're going to have to adjust accordingly to that. So some precincts are going to have more than 4, so we're just going to move people around. Okay, this is how this operation at the Guam Police Department has to function now, because we're in, you know, like I told the guys, we're in somber times right now financially. Okay, we need to do the best that we can to save money, and you know, Senator Lee did mention that we worked on a lot of these events, the 5Ks, Coco Race, International Marathon. Yes, when we were working, we had enough personnel to man these different events. However, because of, you know, the state of affairs now, what we're doing is we're expanding by teaching these race coordinators, event coordinators, teaching their personnel how to help us. Because we don't have 46 officers to put out on 23 traffic control points for the Liberation Day parade. Okay, we're going to need assistance. Okay, with the like the Guam International Marathon, we need about 54 people. Okay, and that's usually overtime if that's officers. Okay, we don't have those numbers now. Now we need to train people for assistance to help them in their events. So that's how the Guam Police Department is operating. Okay, and in regards to our neighborhood watch town hall meetings and our cops-oriented initiatives, okay, now more than ever, it is important for us to reach out to the different communities that are willing to protect themselves, because, you know, the biggest complaint is they never see an officer. And we understand that because, you know, we have our financial constraints, we have our manpower constraints. Officers are leaving the department, retiring, or resigning. Some of them even get terminated. So the manpower keeps dwindling. Okay, so we need to help them make themselves less attractive as a victim. So that's why we are really pushing our neighborhood watch initiatives. Okay, if people don't understand why we're still doing that, even though we're looking at a furlough of officers. So, you know, I hope I answered all your questions, and sir, I'm pretty sure I answered your question.
Yes, I just wondered if you shared my concern that the officers that have been working in neighborhoods and precincts, that they are very experienced by now, or many of them, in writing reports that are going to stand up in court. And now we're putting people who have not done this for their entire lives and we're putting not just our safety, but our you know, convictions into their hands. And I don't think that's an easy task. I think that's something you have to learn on the job over the
Madam
years.
Vice Speaker, I just had a crop of recruits just graduate about a month or so ago. Those police officer trainees are less experienced than any of those officers who are augmenting our patrol operations. And what I mean by less experience is they don't have as much time performing law enforcement duties as some of those officers do. So when you talk about, you know, are we putting the public at risk? No more so.
All 14 new officers weren't assigned to Agana, right?
I'm sorry?
All of the brand new officers that you're talking about, they were not assigned to Agana.
They're spread out.
They're spread out, right?
Yeah.
Because there's some are new and they work with some of the very experienced people.
The methodology for spreading them out, Senator, is again based on the calls for service. It's not because they have a supervisor that's going to be able to, although supervisors do lead them accordingly. But again, the point I'm trying to make is there's no gap in our line, to be figurative in my speaking. There's no compromise to the public safety that we provide to the people of Guam. And that's ultimately where I'm going with this, is that, you know, you yourself had indicated there's a baseline that all officers must have, regardless of where they work and regardless of jurisdiction. And it's because of that baseline that we have that we can work with them, with the more experienced officers, with the experienced and seasoned supervisors, to fill those gaps. So at the end of the day, truly, it is my opinion and the opinion of the rest of the staff that there's no compromise in the safety and security of our people. And that's really what we put forward.
And ma'am, if I may add, you know, these officers from the other agencies that are augmenting us, they respond to everything that we respond to, but in a smaller scale. So especially the officers that, you know, have the seasoned officers, they know how to respond, they know how to investigate, they know how to do everything, because they do that within their jurisdiction. Now that they're helping us, they're expanding their jurisdiction to 9 villages, okay? But because they have that knowledge on how to investigate a traffic accident, how to investigate an assault, a family violence, how to issue a citation, because speeding does happen in their jurisdiction, the services to the public is not being hampered. It's just another person from another agency, not a police officer, is the one that's assisting them, okay?
This summer, there's going to be annual training for a lot of the reservists, and there's probably going to be deployments between now and December. Have you taken that into account and to determine what kind of an impact, and so if you can comment on that.
Yes, Senator, we are looking at that. We have been given a heads up from the different guard units and reserve units. So those are all things that Major Chong has been tasked to take a look at to ensure that there's no gap in our line. So those are a part of the plans that are coming up with regards to all the different annual trainings and military leaves that have to be taken in order to be in compliance with the USERRA public law.
Do you have a approximate number of how many people will be going out for like a 2-week annual training or 6 months?
I don't have that hard and fast number right now, Senator, but if you can make it, my ASO is making a note of that. We will get you those numbers.
All right, thank you.
Sir, if I can, off the top of my head, I know there's 49 or 46 military personnel assigned to my bureau, which is Operations Bureau. Okay, so, and I believe there's about 16 or 15, 16, less than 20, but more than 10 that are going to be part of the deployment in the later part of this year. So the way I have the Operations Bureau personnel distributed, everybody has equal numbers of military personnel assigned to their precincts. So once we get the hard dates and the actual names of these personnel, once I see where they're at within my bureau, I'm going to distribute them accordingly, so that way when the time comes for them to leave, everybody's going to feel a little bit of hurt, but nobody's going to, have that broken femur type of pain. Everybody's going to have a sprained ankle, but not a broken femur. Let's put it that way. If I can use that analogy for you to understand. Okay, because if I put, like if the way the operations are now, and they have several personnel within the same unit assigned to a certain precinct, and I do not distribute them evenly, okay, that precinct is going to have a broken femur, sir.
Mr. Senator, we won't be breaking femurs, by the way. I assure you, we will remain intact. Thank you.
Okay. There's something I'd like to address that was just sent to me, and so I want to give you an opportunity to clarify or maybe debunk it. But I just want you to understand that the law enforcement agencies that have been attached to you are not in violation in any part of the jurisdictional law or any other law as far as them acting as Guam Police Department officers.
Again, Madam Chair,
just yes or no, Chief?
I'm sorry?
Just yes or no?
No.
Okay.
No.
So there's this memorandum, and it reads, to personnel concerned from acting police commander, subject arrest policy, reference officers from outside agencies. As per guidance from the Attorney General's office, effective immediately, all arrests of suspects will be effectuated by Guam Police Department sworn police personnel and not officers from the outside agencies assigned to Guam Police Department in patrol operations or the Mandanya Drug Task Force. The personnel from the outside agencies shall continue to assist GPD in all other police-related functions, such as responding to calls, taking reports and complaints, handling traffic incidents, drug investigations, etc. This assignment will continue until further notice. For compliance,
as you can
and
see,
it has, I'm not
Madam Chair,
Chief, I'm not done.
I'm sorry.
Not done. Thank you. You have one of your senior staffs here and yourself, but my question is if they're not in violation of in any statute or law, what is the necessity of this written memorandum?
The memorandum is an unofficial memorandum. If you look at that document, there are no signatures affixed to that.
So what was the purpose of even writing it?
Well, again, I'm not the author of that memorandum, and I don't know where. Again, I consult with the Attorney General's office. And so long as my signature is not affixed to that, that is not an official document, nor is Major Chong's signature affixed to that document.
So you're not going to need to implement this practice then?
Again, based on my conference with the Attorney General herself, there is no, at this point in time, there is no jurisdictional issues with having those officers assigned to the Guam Police Department.
Okay. And, you know, I hope you understand my concern, right? So if these law enforcement agencies end up making arrests, or if they have done already, you know, how does that impact the case? And so also, how is that going to impact the way you operate? Because I cannot make an arrest unless I have an officer come to me. And so how are they going to mitigate the risk and respond in a timely manner to ensure their safety and the safety of the people that they are servicing? And so I hope that you have a more clarified answer for this piece right here that I'm asking you.
Again, that is not an official document, as signatures are not affixed to it. And if the chief legal officer of the government of Guam has assured me that there is no jurisdictional issues, then I, as the chief of police, will move forward based on the chief legal officer of this government's legal guidance to me.
Can Attorney Kwan concur this?
Excuse me, ma'am. I was the author of that document. That's just me being enthusiastic, trying to protect cases. Okay, the officers are going to be there from now until they retire. Okay, the officers from the outside agencies, hopefully it's soon. They go back to their agencies, and we start operating smoothly. Okay, I was looking at the longevity, okay, of the officers. Okay, if they effectuate an arrest, especially on a serious arrest like an aggravated assault,
which is
CSE.
why I was incurring the need
Yeah.
to deputize them to protect the interests of GPD and the officers that respond.
Again, man, like
And
I
the
said, that's
interest of
me
the
being
law.
enthusiastic. It's a draft. There's no signatures on that. I sent it to the chief for his review. Apparently, he didn't get it because I sent it out to WhatsApp last week, Friday.
As long as things are above board is my
Yeah,
concern.
the chief has, the chief has no fault in this. Like I said, I'm the type of guy that doesn't just look right in front of me. Okay, I'm assuming, or I'm planning that these other outside agency personnel are going to be going back to their agencies come September. Okay, which is really, by the amount if they make a misdemeanor arrest, they're not going to be with us by the time it starts going to the court proceedings. If they make a felony arrest, they're probably not going to be with us when time comes to go to trial. So that is, like, again, that is me trying to use my master's degree, trying to plan ahead, okay, trying to come up with policies that I feel that benefits the department as a whole.
Thank you, Major.
You're welcome.
So and thank you for bringing that up. How you are a forward thinker and you project incidences happening to protect the interests of GPD. And so it just, what is the word? I guess confuses me that we would decide to shut down a whole precinct rather than to merge precincts or pull from individual other precincts to man DOC. And so I hope that we can revisit that and look at that as an option.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Because if you're going to move 35 personnel and they're all highway patrol, perhaps if it's necessary that you feel that it's something that you need to do, perhaps keep the precincts open, especially when they service
9 villages, ma'am.
9 villages.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any other questions for the panel? No? Okay, thank you very much for your time. I want to stress that this is not the last time that we are going to be meeting. I do have a lot of questions that I will send directly to you, Chief, and CC whoever will be acting in your stead if you're not there.
Yes, ma'am.
I know that you voiced some of your concern with the bills that we are passing, that it's not enough revenue for you. I look forward to the future informational hearings or perhaps even an oversight to find out what bills and what policies do we need to put in place to address the situations that you're dealing with. And also, I hope that you will really seriously consider what the mitigated approach to perhaps merging your precincts and allowing again your precinct to open. And if you need to shift out your personnel, then you would also consider that. We will also have some questions sent to you directly about financing.
Yes, ma'am.
And how each individual unit you have operates.
Yes, ma'am.
And we'll see where we go from there.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We're going to take a quick 10-minute recess, and then we'll move on with DOE's informational hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.